It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom. Tom, how are you tonight, brother?
I'm doing great, Keith. We have a phenomenal card this week in UFC 272. We have parts of the main card that are unknown yet to find out who is gonna take on RDA. Is it gonna be Islam Makhachev? Is there gonna be? There was a couple other names thrown out there, right? I'm excited to see who they have, and for the first time in a few weeks, we actually have a guest for this big UFC 272 card. We have on here Josh. Josh, how you doing today?
Good, Tom. What's up, guys? Really happy to be here. Really excited to talk about the fights this weekend. My favorite card of the year so far, and I'm really looking forward to breaking it down with you guys.
Awesome. Well, we're very happy to have you. Like you guys have mentioned, this is an absolutely stacked card. We've got the main event, beef between these two men for years and years now. It feels like, in reality, it's probably just been a few months, but, it's really been amped up over the past couple of weeks, and they're everywhere that you look right now. They're on Stephen A. Smith with, First Take, and, they're everywhere, absolutely everywhere right now. So I have a feeling that this is going to be one of the bigger cards of the year, not just in terms of hype and, how nice the card is, but also in terms of the eyes that are going to be on it. People say that Jorge and Colby don't really sell pay-per-views. Well, I think they'll be proven wrong this upcoming weekend. So we're going to kick this off as we always do with our prelim locks. So I'm going to start with my very first. It's actually one of the later prelim fights. I've got Marina Rodriguez over Xiaonan Yan. Marina Rodriguez is really just shown to be a better overall fighter. And, when it comes to women's fights in particular, you have to be very intelligent, especially if, you're fighting for points. Not many of these women have the knockout power. We have seen one over the past couple of months. We've got Josiane Nunez. And I just want to say real quick, keep an eye on her. She fought this past weekend against Pasquale. And she's a woman to keep an eye out for because she does have knockout power, knocked out Bea Malecki a few months ago. But, a lot of these women do not have the one punch type of power, or even the ability to just sustain combinations that'll put somebody to sleep. So when it comes to women's fights, you really have to fight intelligently. Control time, like we've mentioned a million times on this show, is valued very, very highly in women's MMA. You don't really have to land damage from any clinch or, from a top position. And Marina Rodriguez is really, really intelligent when it comes to maintaining distance, using her strikes smartly. And, when she does get into those top control positions or, especially like clinch against the cage, she's really good about just maintaining and staying there for long amounts of time. So I'm rolling with Marina Rodriguez by decision. Don't know the odds on that yet, but as it gets closer, we'll find out and we'll let you know. Our Twitters are down below. Tom.
Yeah, Keith, I agree with you. I think Marina Rodriguez is a good pick there. I think Yan Zhangyan. I think it's the last name first, like the Chinese or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think that Zhang Yan has been maybe a little bit overvalued by a couple of fighters and performances against people who were at the end points of their career, but still were propped up by a bigger name. She got beaten badly by Carla Esparza, ground and pound from the crucifix. And I think Marina Rodriguez, like you were saying, has shown that she can be a powerful grappler, stay in control. And, that's how you win, maybe not as many male fights, but certainly in UFC and MMA as a whole, if you can take somebody down and be in top control, if you land just a few punches, just a little bit of ground and pound, you set yourself up for a lot better success with the judges moving forward. But I think Marina Rodriguez, looking at it on Tapology, 92% are taking her to win. Of those, 80% are going by decision. So it seems to be the popular pick. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense. I think Marina Rodriguez has shown that she's a really good experience too coming into this fight, and I think that she's a really deserved favorite here. I think also at strawweight, she just kind of knows how to use her body in the right ways, and I think that she's clearly kind of the front runner there, and also for Keith's pick, definitely a solid lock in the prelims, I think.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, we'll pass it over to Tom now. Tom, kick us off with one of your locks.
Yeah, and this one is not going to really surprise anybody. I'm going with Umar Nurmagomedov over Brian Kelleher. Kelleher has had a couple good performances lately, but, similar to Zhang Yan, and I don't think I will ever say her name correctly, but I think, Brian Kelleher has been propped up by a couple fights and a couple fighters who maybe haven't been as good or as close to their prime as, maybe their name would suggest or as, a common person would think when, you're hearing about who he's fighting. He's had a couple wins. They were unanimous decision wins over the past, few fights here, but really over his last five, he's still 3-2. I think he's a guy who at 35 years old, that he's not going to really compete for a belt at any particular point. At least it would be really far-fetched to assume so. Usually fighting at 145 at featherweight. He's now fighting at bantamweight against Umar Nurmagomedov, who is undefeated. And the other thing about Boom Boom Kelleher is that he is well-rounded, but he can find himself losing on the ground, especially to grapplers and people who are really specialized at that. And you don't get more specialized than a guy with the last name Nurmagomedov, but similar to, or I guess dissimilar to Khabib and Islam Makhachev, he actually has a really, really good stand-up game, Umar does. So I think there's a real opportunity for Brian Kelleher to get KO'd here. I know that that's not really what Umar is known for. I think three of his last 5 wins have came by submission. But I think Brian Kelleher is going to try to rely on his grappling, which is going to, open up the potential to get knocked out on the feet. So I think as he's getting up there in age, as he goes through, and Brian Kelleher, you get the nickname Boom, not because you don't take shots. So I think, over time, I think eventually that chin is going to catch up with you. At 35 years old, 1 month, basically 5 weeks off his last fight, I think Brian Kelleher can, potentially find himself KO'd here.
It pains me because I might be one of the rare Brian Kelleher fans out there. But I actually really enjoy watching him fight because he does, when he has a favorable matchup, like in his last one against Kevin Croom, really long, lanky guy in Kevin Croom. And Brian Kelleher is definitely a little bit more of a stout type of guy in comparison. And, he's a very intelligent guy when he fights those, more mid-tier bantamweights. But it pains me because I am a Brian Kelleher fan, and this just feels like he's a sacrificial lamb this weekend. I'm going to have to roll with you on the Umar pick. Good old Dr. Umar, but yeah, it's tough for me. It's tough.
Umar by finish, for sure.
Yeah, potentially. I don't disagree with you that that's a major possibility. I think that more likely than the knockout, it'll probably come by way of submission. Me personally, just because I like Brian and I like to bet on guys that, I enjoy watching, being that he's a plus 475 heavy underdog in this fight, sprinkle a little bit on him, just like the slightest bit, because, if all else fails and that somehow hits, at least you got yourself something out of the night. So, I'm still rolling with Umar Nurmagomedov, but poor Brian. Sucks. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you, Keith. I really like watching Brian fight. I think he's super exciting, and I think that he, true to his nickname, really can bring it. And he's had some really exciting fights here in the last couple of years. But this fight almost reminds me of Gaethje and Khabib in a sense. Not that Umar and Brian are quite nearly at their level, but you have a Nurmagomedov who's probably superior in on the ground, wrestling, grappling. And even if Brian is good at grappling, there's, I just don't see him being able to take down Umar and really control him or win the fight there. So I think that there's a reason this fight is the longest odds on the prelims, and I think that Umar is the rightful favorite. So I'm going to take Umar. I like Tom's pick by finish. I think. I don't know if I see this one going all the way to the end of the 3 rounds. I think even if he doesn't finish him on the feet or knock him out, like Tom said, with a potential weak chin that Brian might be developing as he gets older, I do think that he could at least finish him by submission within the 3 rounds. So I'm going to take Umar, but I'm with you, Keith. I do like watching Brian fight.
Wow, it's nice to meet another Brian Kelleher. So, Josh, who's your prelim lock?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the prelim headliner. I'm gonna take Jalen Turner. I really like watching him fight. I like that he's kind of a lanky guy at 155. I really like what he did in his last two fights. He submitted both Uros Medic and Brock Weaver, and those guys aren't huge names, but I like that a big lanky guy like that can use his body and get sub finishes within 3 rounds. And so I kind of like how he matches up. Jamie Mullarkey's a little bit smaller and stockier, so it might actually be an interesting grappling matchup. But Jamie Mullarkey's last few finishes are finished by knockout and TKO. You can look down his whole list, and every fight, whether he's winning or losing, it's knockout or TKO. So I think there should be some fireworks in this one. I really think that Jalen Turner is an exciting guy to watch fight. Really lanky, kind of like a poor man's Israel Adesanya. But Jimmy Mullarkey definitely, he trains with the best. He's Tiger Muay Thai, and he's training with Volk as well. And so I like how they're going to match up. I think it's going to be an exciting fight, but I love watching Jalen Turner fight, so I'm going to pick him. And I don't think that this is going to go all the way to the end. I think there's going to be a finish.
I'm really conflicted on this one, so I'll tell you which way I'm leaning, and then I'll just pass it over to Tom after that. I'm personally leaning towards Jamie Mullarkey in this one. How are you feeling, Tom?
Yeah, I'm kind of also leaning Jamie Mullarkey. I mean, he, Josh, like you were saying, he's training with Volk, and especially since he started training with Volk, he fought Volk earlier in his career, lost, shocker. But he went back and he's now actually training with Volkanovski. And we saw, videos of him training with Volkanovski. That also means, they saw Khamzat Chimaev out there training with Volkanovski, right? And he's also out there with Darren Till. So this is a really interesting group hodgepodge of people who are training together. And I think that ultimately, when you have that level of training partner, I think that is, really powerful for you in your development. And then going back to his 2 losses to Brad Riddell, which really it aged well. And for CM, which hasn't aged as well, but, you take the loss there, everyone has like kind of a questionable loss, but he came back, and after training with Volk, he comes back and he beats the crap out of Kama Worthy with a left hook to the ground and pound, in the first round. And then, finish in the second round via punches over Devontae Smith, who's another fighter who, a lot of people are really high on and a really good prospect. So I think for Jamie Malarkey, I think he's got a lot going for him. These are going to be 2 really big lightweights. 6'3" versus 6 foot. I think, like you said, Josh, really lanky is Jalen Turner. But in actuality, they only have about a 1 to a 1.5 inch reach advantage for Jalen Turner. So not that much of a reach advantage for the lanky guy either way. I like Jamie Malarkey. I like his training partners. I like the fighter he's become. I think, Jalen Turner, over his last few fights since entering the UFC, I think we've seen him do a lot of the same things, whereas Jamie Malarkey, we've seen his game really develop and flourish into something of a more, experienced, well-rounded fighter that, is utilizing the body kick and able to finish fights now. So I'm going with Jamie Malarkey.
Yeah, man, all good points. I definitely understand why it's a really tight line, and I agree with a lot of what you said about Jamie Malarkey. This is solely a gut pick, and I like Jalen Turner, so I'm going to ride with it. And I like that he's like you said, reach not so much, but I like that he's tall. I like that he's lanky, kind of like how he uses his body. So I'm going to still roll with Jalen, but it should be an interesting fight. I'm really excited for it.
I'm good on my prelim locks. Do either of you guys have any more that you want to bring up real quick?
Yeah, I had one more, and I think it's just because Kennedy Nzechukwu has a really, really bad chin. I think he has statistically one of the worst chins in the UFC right now, and he's fighting a guy with big power, Nick Negumereanu, who's coming off a big win recently. I like Nicholas Negumereanu. He's going to be shorter here, and he's also going to be at a 5-inch reach disadvantage. But Kennedy Nzechukwu, we know him to just take some fights off, and it's really going to be difficult to predict what you're going to get from him, because he just, like I said, takes nights off, takes rounds off, sometimes just doesn't look like he's all that into the fight. His last fight was taken out by Dong Jung with standing elbows that he was actually kind of almost blocking too when they were landing. So I don't know if Kennedy Nzechukwu was going to show up and be the African Savage, as his nickname entails, or if he's going to kind of tap out early. Being only 29 years old, 9-2, he's in a really good position to potentially take off if he wants to. But I think Nick Negumereanu is really good at, the grappling against the fence. I think he is going to have a lot of pressure. His last fight was a knockout of Ike Villanueva, a guy who statistically is hard to finish. And he went in and made it kind of easy looking. I like Nick Negumereanu. We had some questions about him going into his last fight, but I think his win over Ike Villanueva proved a couple of things to us. And I'm really excited here. I think he's going to, jump Kennedy Nzechukwu and get a little bit higher on the 205 rankings. This is a very, very weak division, 205 is right now. So I think, just a string 2 or 3 wins together and you could be a top level contender.
That's a really good point. Yeah, there's so many guys just trying to work their way up there to the top right now. And, guys are also constantly falling down. Like, look at Johnny Walker. For years and years, we thought that he was going to be the guy. And, I personally didn't. We, as in the MMA community as a whole. But, Johnny Walker is a great example of that. And then on the flip side, you have a guy like Glover Teixeira, who looks like he's just sitting there in the back seat for a little bit and somehow becomes the oldest first-time champion in the history of the UFC. So, really good case to be made there for how this light heavyweight division moves. And it's constantly shuffling like a game of musical chairs. I digress. I'm rolling with the under if it's set at, basically it can only be 1.5 or 2.5. So I'm going to roll with the under rounds in this one. If it's at 1.5, then I may lean more towards fight to not go the distance because of some of the points that you made there, especially Kennedy Nzechukwu's weak chin and his willingness to just give up in a fight. So I'm rolling with one of those 2 picks. Stay tuned. I'll let you know on Twitter and pickinwinners.org. So Josh, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I largely agree with most of what Tom said. I don't think that Kennedy Nzechukwu is a very committed, exciting fighter. Sometimes he really has heavy hands and he can really lay some blows if he wants to, but I think that he's sometimes lazy or looks kind of checked out when he's moving around the cage. And the points that Tom made about his chin, I've seen him lose fights pretty quickly and handily where I didn't think that it should have been that easy for his opponent to win. So I'm also going to take Nick Negumereanu, but hopefully, light heavyweight, both these guys can bang a little bit. Hopefully we'll see something out of it. But I agree with you, Keith. Probably not going to go the distance. And I would, if I had to pick, I'd also take the under on that one as well.
All right, sweet. So, Tom, you're good on your prelim locks?
Yeah, I would also I would sprinkle anything on any Ukrainian fighter right now. So Mariana Miraz, I'm going to sprinkle a little on her. And that leads us to our opening fight on the pay-per-view on the main card, Sergey Spivak versus Greg Hardy. And I got to tell you guys, leading up to today and leading up to right now, I was thinking this was going to be Greg Hardy's comeback fight here. And after looking at their Tapology pages and thinking about Ukraine and all that stuff, I just don't see how Sergey Spivak loses this one. I mean, I'm looking back at his last few opponents here. He has a loss to Tom Aspinall, who's now at the top of the division. So I can forgive that. Sergey Spivak, he's more experienced on the ground, and we know that that's where Greg Hardy is going to struggle. Now, Greg Hardy's going to be the much bigger guy. He's going to be a lot stronger. But I mean, Sergey Spivak was able to out-grapple to a decision Alexei Olenek. He was able to, get a ground and pound victory over Jared Vandera. And then another big decision victory over a heavy guy in Carlos Felipe. So, I know that, Greg Hardy's probably cuts down and will be the strongest guy he's had to face so far. But I think, if he can avoid Greg Hardy's, wild offense, which he has avoided other people's offense in the back. I mean, now I'm talking myself into swinging the other way, because is he going to be able to get the 265-pound former defensive tackle down to the ground? I mean, the last guy who Tai Tuivasa just knocked him straight out. Marcin Tybura got him down to the ground, and Sergey Spivak has been out wrestled by Marcin Tybura before. So a lot of questions here. Keith, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yeah, this is definitely a tough one. And I just want to say something real quick. Greg Hardy is on a 2-fight losing streak right now. And I have to think that the only reason he keeps getting thrown on the main card of pay-per-views is because, he has a history of, potential domestic violence alleged. And I like to see guys like that get beat up. I'm really looking forward to John Jones coming back and fighting someone like Yuri Prohashka, who's just going to give it. Well, no, actually, he's moving up to heavyweight. So, Francis Ngannou, someone who's just going to absolutely give it to him. But, that's why I like to see Greg Hardy fight. And I don't think that Sergey Spivak is unfortunately going to be the guy that gives it to him in a way that's going to put him to sleep or, do something astonishing to open up the main card. I do think, though, that Sergey Spivak just has so many more paths to victory. And, it's going to be tough for him to bring Greg Hardy to the ground. But there comes a point in a fighter's career when they've been chinned so many times, and especially being that Greg Hardy's last fight, he was just put to sleep with, one really good shot from Tuivasa. I think that he may be a little bit afraid of getting caught with something like an overhand. And I really hope that Sergey Spivak, and this is more of a hope than me thinking that this is going to happen, comes into this fight with a, overhand right into a takedown, something very, old school wrestler esque. And, I would just really like to see something like that out of Sergey Spivak, because I think that would be the path to take Greg Hardy to the ground. And because he'd be so worried about that shot coming over the top. I can't say that I think that I don't know. There's just so many more paths to victory for Sergey, though. He could easily outclinch Greg Hardy up against the cage. He's just a more of a mixed martial artist than Greg Hardy is. So I'm rolling with Sergey Spivak here. And this is definitely another one that I don't think that the fight will make it for a full 15 minutes. So I'm going with Sergey Spivak, and then I'm also going with fight not to go the distance in this one. What do you think, Josh? Oh, Tom.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Tom. All right. Yeah, no, that's all good. I like a lot of the points that both of you guys made. I'm rolling with Greg Hardy. I think that, Keith, what you said was exactly right. I think Spivak probably has more ways to win. Hardy has shown that he can be taken down. I'm not really sure how he trains. It looks like he's kind of the same every fight. He's kind of lumbering, waiting for his shot. And, like you said, Tom, Spivak's got the Ukraine situation on his mind, and that's maybe why I'm going the other way than you did. I think maybe it's too much on his mind, potentially. And I really like watching Greg Hardy fight. I think it's going to be fireworks either way. I think that he gets tired really quick, but I think he can throw a hell of a haymaker, and I think that he's always got a puncher's chance. I don't want to say I'm rooting for him on a personal level, but at the same time, I think that it's exciting when he fights. I like seeing him on these main cards. 7-4 after such a hot, quick start in the UFC. Definitely slowed down, but it means he's due for a win. I think that he's got the power. I think he's got the size, and I think that if somehow, don't know how he's training, but if he has worked on his grappling or clinch or anything that can give him a better look than he's had in his past couple fights, I think that he could be maybe a little bit too much for Spivak size-wise. So I'm going to take Greg Hardy. I like him at plus 175. I see the plus sign, and I like it. So I'm going to take the underdog. I like seeing Greg Hardy fight, and hopefully, hopefully we get some fireworks at least. Keith, I really like the pick of it, not going the distance. And we'll see. What about you, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going Sergey Spivak through and through. I think the Ukraine thing is going to be on his mind in a positive way. I think he's going to go out there and feel like he's fighting for his country, which, in many ways he is. But you look back at Greg Hardy, you look at who his wins and who his losses are to. Tai Tuivasa, top of the division of the weight class. Marcin Tybura, he has a loss there. Alexander Volkov, a loss. The wins that separate that are Maurice Green. Maurice Green's most recent fight was a loss to Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Before that, he lost to Greg Hardy. He beat John Valente, who is retired and no longer in the UFC, and then he has a loss to Alexei Olenek and Sergey Pavlovich. So, I'm not considering, saying a Maurice Green win is really anything that would jump you up the rankings to contend with someone like Sergey Spivak. I think he has a lot more better competition. His other win is Jorge De Castro. Jorge De Castro, his most recent fight was on Eagle FC. Before that, CES. Those are 2 wins. Before that, 3 equal losses in the UFC. Greg Hardy, Carlos Felipe, and Jairus Donholo. The guy also not in the UFC anymore. So when you look at those and you look at the level of competition that these 2 guys have fought, Greg Hardy, while impressive that, entering this sport at he is now 33, probably entered at around 26, 27, 28 years old. Impressive that he can fight at the highest level, but I think a lot of that has to do with his natural born athleticism and the name that he's coming in with, and props to him for, he is saying and doing all the right things. He is trying to turn, his life around. He is trying to apologize and I guess maybe channel some of the anger or demons or whatever is built up inside him. But either way, I think Sergey Spivak is going to come out victorious here. I think he is going to be a little bit more strategic, and he's been in the cage with guys who throw wild like Walt Harris. So I think he's going to be able to duck under punches, find, a way in to clinch, use the clinch to take down. And even, he doesn't have to take Greg Hardy down. He just needs Greg Hardy to fall to the ground. So if that means maybe pulling a guard or something, getting him in a clinch up against the cage and doing maybe an outside trip or something where, he can fall back with him. It doesn't have to be a straight single leg or double leg takedown. It's not like Greg Hardy has amazing clinch work or fence work either. So I think Sergey Spivak, like you guys said, has more ways to win here. I think he has better level of competition. I think he has something more motivating to fight for. Sergey Spivak.
All right, cool. So we'll move on to the next one now. We've got that was really good, Tom. We've got Kevin Holland versus Alex Olivera. Listen, this is also, in my opinion, a little bit of a tougher one because we've seen this Kevin Holland that can't really do anything on the ground. Alex Olivera on the flip side is not really known for being really efficient on the ground either. So I'm going to personally roll with Kevin Holland. I feel like after this 2-loss downslide that he's had, he's going to step it up. He's moving down to welterweight, and I think that actually bodes well for him. I think that welterweight is a nightmare for strikers right now. It's a big time grappling heavy, wrestling heavy division. But I just think in terms of like what he's going to be able to do here, in that mid tier of the division, it's going to be, or I don't know. I guess we'll see where he lands after this one. Anyways, Kevin Holland, really good striker. Alex Olivera seems to be on his way out. 3 fight losing streak right now. The only thing that I'm disagreeing with the majority of the internet on this one is that 68% of the votes on Tapology coming in on Kevin Holland have him winning by knockout. And I can't really find or remember a time that Alex Olivera was ever chinned or put to sleep, standing up on his feet. So I actually really like Kevin Holland by decision in this one. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I think that's really good dissection of what's going on here. I mean, both of these guys are strikers, and the 2 losses that came, most recently for Kevin Holland and even the decision against what's his name, Kyle Dukakis. Yeah, Dukakis from Secaucus. The no decision over Kyle Dawkins. I mean, the only place that he was losing was on when he was going to get taken down. So I don't think he's going to have the same issue with Cowboy Olivera. I think he's going to be allowed to shine. And even in his last 3 fights, when he was on the feet, he did shine. When he was on the feet, he did piece up Derek Brunson for a period at the end of their fight. He did, stun and hold his own against Marvin Vettori when he fought him. And really, ever since then, he fought Kyle Dawkins, and he was winning on the feet too. The accidental headbutt, knocked Kyle Dawkins out, and that's what ended up changing it into a no contest. But at the end of the day, we know Kevin Holland is really good stand-up. I think he's going to be a lot bigger in this division weight-wise, so that'll help him with his takedown defense. He's been at Hendrickson, he likes to talk about that, being in Hendrickson with Dan Hendricks and learning grappling and takedown defense. So he's going to be tall for the division. He's going to be of a more solid weight to defend takedowns, and he's been practicing grappling, and he's going against a guy who isn't known for his grappling and is on a 3-fight skid, getting outstruck at the thing that he's best at. I like Kevin Holland. All signs point toward Trailblazer, big mouth Kevin Holland. And even if it does go all 5 rounds, which I would, or not all 5, it's 3. I'm happy for it to go all 3 because I hope Kevin Holland starts talking a little bit. Not too much. You don't want to get his mind off things, but yeah, definitely talking, and that's what made him interesting. Keep it up.
Yeah, I just have a quick point that I forgot to make before, and you touched on it well with Hendrickson. One thing looking back in Alex Olivera's history is that a lot of his fights he lost by submission, and some notable ones coming to like Cowboy Cerrone. And I think that it would be interesting if Kevin Holland, who does actually have a few submission victories under his belt, won this one by submission. I feel like that might be like a really sneaky pick to throw a little bit on in this one. Maybe he gets out here and he's like, yo, let me like actually flex what I've learned from training with like Dagestanis and going to Hendrickson. So
I love that. I'm going to tell you on that. And I think that that's a pick right there that like we may look back on, clip this, and be posting that after he gets a submission win, and he go and can't you see it now that he, defends a takedown, turns it into an offensive, and then submits Olivera, or something happens where he can, and a lot of people forget, just because he was taken down and controlled, it was at a weight class where he was a little bit lighter, right? And even when he was on the ground, he didn't like just submit. He was trying to be offensive and wasn't going for positions over submissions. He was just going for the submissions, off his back. Remember, he had that really awesome knockout of Jacare Souza off of his back. So Kevin Holland is dangerous from everywhere, anywhere. And I really like the idea that he's going to defend a couple takedowns and then win on the ground again to say, hey, what's up? I'm back in this new division. I think that's going to be, I like that pick a lot, Keith.
Thank you. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I'm rolling with you guys on this one. I was a little surprised to see it at minus 300 for Kevin Holland. I think that he's rightfully the favorite, but I think Cowboy Olivera is not equally good, but still an interesting striker, and I think it should be an interesting fight. But you guys both kind of touched on it. You look at all the fights that Holland has lost, and Martin Vettori, Derek Brunson, nothing to sneeze at, both of those guys. Brandon Allen has been a lot better recently. Thiago Santos, even 3 years ago, and all those are good losses. And so I think I don't know if we've been able to see actually how much of the progress that he's made at grappling over at Hendrickson, but I do think that it's obviously going to be better than what it was. And so I think that, yeah, good sneaky pick there to win by submission. But even so, I like him, even this fight never even touches the ground. I like him over Cowboy Olivera with the striking. I think that Kevin Holland is really exciting and a star on the rise. And I think, taking the time after his head collapsed with Dawkins, I think that he's probably going to come out wanting to put on a show after the not lackluster, but probably a not very satisfying ending to his last fight. And I think that he's going to want to come out and prove a point. So I'm taking Holland as well here. And I think that should be a good fight, but I just think that I like him kind of in all facets over Cowboy Olivera.
Yeah, that's really well said. So we're going to move up to the co-main event now. And, originally wasn't the co-main event. We were slated to have RDA versus Rafael Fiziev originally.
So I was just perusing Twitter there, and it looks like on Twitter they both agreed at a 170-pound catch weight. We're waiting on the UFC to confirm that, but on Twitter both guys agreed on 170. They added each other, and Elwani tweeted it. So should we go ahead and pick that?
Which two guys? Islam and RDA? Islam and RDA,
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that kind of on the spot. Listen, I'm rolling with Islam Makhachev in this one. I think, let's see, when was the last time RDA fought? See, I think that Islam Makhachev is just so active recently, and he's just absolutely tearing through this division. And I think it's the right move to make because, just this past weekend, all of MMA Twitter was on the side of Islam Makhachev, saying that he deserved a title shot after fighting Bobby Green 2 weeks out from his last fight. So I think that, in order for Islam to really earn that title shot, maybe get in there like right after Justin Gaethje, or, who knows, maybe Charles decides to go for a money fight with Conor in between the two. But in order for him to really, say like, hey, I'm the clear number one contender at this point, coming off of, a week of rest, not even, and going in there to fight RDA, who's always been hovering in the top 5, that really proves that Islam deserves that shot. And I think he's going to do it, and I think he's going to do it very dominantly. RDA is a guy with a way better ground game, obviously, than Bobby Green and Dan Hooker and a lot of the other competition that Islam Makhachev has had. But, I think at the very least, Islam wins this one by decision because RDA is going to have some good counters for some of those submissions. He's fought some really good wrestlers in the past. I'm still rolling with Islam Makhachev regardless in this. I'm curious to see what the odds are going to be, though, if it's going to be such a lopsided line the way that it was when he fought Bobby Green. But I'm rolling with Islam here. What do you have, Tom?
Yeah, I'm also rolling with Islam here because I think Islam has a really powerful and smothering offensive grappling attack. And, when we're talking about RDA, we're talking about a guy who's well past his prime, whose last bout was in December of 2020, which was a grappling bout, and he lost to Donald Cerrone via grappling bout. I don't think at any weight class Islam Makhachev or anyone with a V at the end of their name is losing to Donald Cerrone. Don't get me wrong, Donald Cerrone is a capable wrestler, but grappler. But at this point in his life, after all the surgery he's had, all the damage that he's taken, and just on the basis of the fact that these Dagestani wrestlers and grapplers are probably better than Donald Cerrone had been at even in his prime. So I think you're talking about a guy in RDA whose last win was in November of 2020 against Paul Felder on short notice. I think you're talking about a guy who was probably going to lose to Rafael Fiziev, is now taking a step up in competition against Islam Makhachev. I'd rather see Islam Makhachev versus Rafael Fiziev. But at the end of the day, I think this makes a really good case for Islam because I think this might be the fastest turnaround that there's ever been in MMA, at least ties it. I can't imagine anybody is fighting on 3 or 4 days notice back to back, unless you go back to the real old school fights of 1999 to 2000 where they fought multiple times in the same night. But in the current era, I think this would say a lot for Islam Makhachev. And for him, I think there's really no downside. I think he can outstrike RDA on the feet if he had to, or at least, avoid anything RDA has to offer. I think he takes RDA down. I think he controls him. Keith, you make a good point about him being a better level of competition than he's fought in the past, but I just don't see Islam really running into trouble with RDA at all, especially at this stage of his career. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I'll push back on one of your points. I do think there is some downside to this fight for Islam. If he does lose, this is puts out his fire, his rocket ship to the top so quickly. Having said that, though, I don't know if I think that I don't think he'll lose. He feels like the second coming, right, of Khabib. He feels like he even has a little bit more offensively, and I really like everything that Islam brings to the table. I don't think that there's really anything that would scare him about RDA, except for the fact that maybe mentally he just wasn't ready for this fight. And so, like I said, if he were to lose, that really puts a damper on his ascension. But I do think that he's going to win pretty handily if this fight does happen. I think that RDA is a great vet, probably one of the better names that Islam has been looking for. He took that kind of step back with Bobby Green, no fault of his own, but probably not the fight he was looking for to step forward to earn his title shot. RDA, he gets the win, shows that he's a veteran, does the UFC a huge solid, by the way, if he were to take this fight. Probably going to go a long way with Hunter and Dana at the top scheduling those fights. And I think that it's a win. Obviously, maybe not a fully win-win if he does lose, but I think that it's a lot of good things could happen for Islam if he were to win this, and probably deservedly earns that title shot afterwards. So I think that he's going to win. I think that it's going to be a good fight for him. I'll be very interested to see him at 170 go up a weight class. I don't know. I think he has the body for it. He has the frame to put on some more weight, and he probably cuts a ton anyway. But it'll be interesting, a new wrinkle in his game, and I think it'll be really fun to watch. So I'm going to take Islam, and it should be really exciting.
Yeah, so we're all in agreement. So I have a feeling that there's nobody out there in the world that follows this sport that won't have Islam Makhachev going into this fight. So now we can move on to let's see how they structure it. But what's currently the co-main event? Real quick, I'm curious to see, though. I'm sure that they'll make that fight 3 rounds, RDA and Islam, as opposed to, it was supposed to be 5 between RDA and Rafael Fiziev. I'm sure it'll be 3 just because of the quick turnaround for Islam Makhachev. Although he is coming off a 5-round fight, technically, that he just trained for. So I don't know. It's weird. I'm looking forward to seeing how this one shakes out over the next week. It's going to be really interesting. So now we've got Edson Barboza versus Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell. And this is one I'm kind of torn on. Everybody knows who Edson Barboza is. A little bit of an older Edson Barboza at 36 years old. And then we've got somewhat of a newcomer in Bryce Mitchell. He's a product of Tough. And let's see, he's not really got many fights in the UFC at this point. If you include his Ultimate Fighter fights, then, you've got 6 fights in the UFC. And, his last 2 wins came against Andre Fili and Charles Rosa by way of unanimous decision. Edson Barboza typically tends to be more of a finisher. So I'm conflicted on this one. I think just because he's like the hot new thing, I'm going to roll with Bryce Mitchell here. I feel like the UFC may be looking at this like, everybody knows who Edson Barboza is. Bryce Mitchell might be the new guy, and they might be looking at it from a matchmaking standpoint, like we can set this up and put Bryce Mitchell on everybody's radar through this fight. But it's tough because Bryce Mitchell hasn't really been active. I can't remember what his injury was, but he hasn't fought since October, actually Halloween of 2020. Whereas Edson Barboza last got in there against Giga Chikadze. So, this is a tough one. Purely taking this one because of gut feeling and just because, we've seen setup fights like this before. And, I'm excited to see what Bryce Mitchell can do against a step up in competition. So I'm rolling with Bryce Mitchell here. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, he said to set up fight that Bryce Mitchell is looking to go out there and create some notoriety for himself and be a little bit more of a no name. But yeah, I think he's kind of doing that for himself already. I mean, I think we've all seen him on Ariel Helwani, make it basically going against the grain in every capacity, taking the opportunity to kind of interview Ariel, and Ariel really handled it well. Especially, I know some of the things that they were talking about probably hit a little close for home for Ariel, specifically. But I think he handled the interview, and at the end of the day, I think he was genuinely curious to understand why Bryce maybe thought some of the way he thought. But when it comes to pure fighting, I think Bryce Mitchell is going to have everything he needs to take care of Edson Barboza here. I mean, Barboza's last few wins, we know he changed weight classes recently. He has a split decision loss to Paul Felder and, another split decision loss to Dan Ige, moved down, had a unanimous decision win against Makwan Amirkhani. He finished Shane Burgos, but that was a fight where they were really standing and going after each other. And he was even in the middle of the ring. And, that was a really, really good standing fight, but there really wasn't much threat of a takedown. And, Edson Barboza didn't have to do too much, ground game there. And it's not like Shane Burgos even has the ground capacity that Bryce Mitchell does. You look at his loss to Giga Chikadze, that was a standing battle that he lost via, the Giga kick, right? I think all in all, I think Edson Barboza at 36 years old, I think he's a really, really good contender at 145, but I think he is just that as a contender. And I think Bryce Mitchell at 27 years old with a really good eye for takedowns and for slipping in, not getting hit and getting on the ground. And even if he does get hit, he has a really, really good chin. I don't think Edson Barboza is the guy who's going to come in and KO people with one punch anymore or a nice big head kick. I think Bryce Mitchell is smart enough to avoid, the kicking Edson Barboza, get in close, take him down, and then use his, grappling ability to finish the fight down there. At the very least, get top position and control. Don't discredit Edson Barboza and his ground game. He is a Brazilian, and they always have a very good level of jiu-jitsu and grappling ability. But I think Bryce Mitchell is going to be too much on the ground. I think he's going to be able to avoid whatever Barboza has for him. And I think he's going to be another like Sean Strickland type where people kind of love to hate him.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, perfect card to be on if you love to hate someone with Colby coming up. But I'm really interested about this fight with Bryce Mitchell. I think that Edson Barboza is probably the fighter he'll have fought where his hands are full the most. Andre Fili, Charles Rosa. Andre Fili definitely a good win, but I think Edson Barboza is probably the most experienced, probably the most ready to be fighting someone like Bryce Mitchell, and I'll be interested to see how Bryce Mitchell handles it. But just looking at some of his fights, since he's been in the UFC, he's only got one submission. So I'd really like to see Bryce Mitchell actually finish this fight if he can. 4 decisions that, all come from obviously dominating on the ground. But to your point, Tom, I'm sure Edson Barboza is going to know what to do when he's, being controlled, or at least maybe a little bit more than Andre Fili or Charles Rosa. So I'd really like to see Bryce Mitchell actually take this one and not go the distance. I'd like to see him actually prove that he can start getting some finishes. 14-0, and he can really just keep riding that wave if he wants to control on the ground the whole time and get these decision wins. And, nobody's going to argue that. Definitely an efficient way to win, protecting himself that way too. But for somebody who talks as much as him and has so much hype, I'm sure the UFC and me as a fan, I'd love to see him actually not necessarily put his money where his mouth is, because he does win, but I'd like to see something happen that's or maybe something a little different and getting an actual submission win. I am going to take Bryce Mitchell. I think that he young star rising. I like what he brings to the table, and I think that he's a really good fighter. But I'd like to see maybe something a little bit more from him this time around.
Yeah, all-time Bryce Mitchell highlight, and it's not a fighting highlight, it's a verbal highlight, is when he was on Theo Von's show, and he said, all that stuff about, if me and Floyd were in a cell together, there better be eggs and grits when I wake up in the morning because he gonna be my bitch. That's classic all-time. If you've never heard it, go check it out. That shit is fucking hilarious. And I do like Bryce Mitchell by submission in this one as well. It's not my favorite pick. I'm going to take him straight because those odds last I looked were like -115 in Bryce Mitchell's favor. But I actually do like the submission pick as a really sneaky one. He does have a really good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, and that submission that he won, his only submission victory in the UFC, came by way of twister, which, if you're deep into grappling and you really like the UFC, then you know that that's a tough one to pull off. So now we've got the main event. And, kind of touched on this one before. You can say so much by saying so little. There's so much that everybody already knows about this one, but if you don't, that's why we're here for for you. So we've got Colby Covington versus Jorge, George, Masvidal, however you want to say it. I like to go with George. So listen, Colby Covington is a minus 330 favorite in this one, as opposed to George Masvidal at plus 260. These two used to be best friends. You know, the quick background, used to train at an American Top Team together. Got into some beef because apparently Colby, according to George, didn't pay one of his coaches, and then they started scrapping with each other and getting into it verbally all the time at practice. So Colby was forced out of ATT, and you know, he became this big heel character that he is now today, and they just don't like each other very much. There's way more to it than that. Watch the sit down that they had with Stephen A. Smith. It sounds way better coming out of their mouth. But regardless, from a skill standpoint, Colby Covington just is an incredible wrestler. The whole reason they brought him into American Top Team was to, you know, they were like kind of putting out feelers for wrestlers, and he filled out an application. They brought him in. He had the resume, and they felt that he was such a good wrestler that he could really improve what was a striking heavy gym at the time. So, you know, the wrestling skills are there. You know, you look at his fights with Kamaru Usman, definitely the most competitive that the welterweight champion has had to put up with in his time holding that belt. And then, you know, you look at Jorge Masvidal in comparison, he got slept with just a beautiful one-punch knockout by Kamaru Usman the last time around. Colby ate those and kept pushing forward the entire time. He was really the aggressor in that last fight between the two of them. And then another big thing you have to watch out for with Colby Covington is he's got an incredible gas tank. He uses that wrestling to really weigh on his opponents and just make it tough for them to breathe, you know, really constrict their breathing. And he doesn't waste anything. Everything is very calculated, especially in the wrestling realm, but even with the striking, everything is just so intelligently thought through. And, you know, he knows, especially over a 5-round fight against a guy like Masvidal, who, you know, doesn't really see many 5-round fights or see them to the end, at least. He knows really how to just abuse the other guy's lungs. Funny quote from Colby this past week. I've got such a good gas tank because I have 2 lungs. Buddy, anybody that wasn't born with a medical issue has 2 lungs. But love him or hate him, Colby Covington is going to come out on top on this one. It's really tough to say how. We haven't seen him pull off many submissions, and he is really a point fighter. But I do think that the aggression level is going to be there between the two of these guys. That maybe Colby knocks out George. I think that George is going to be so upset and so heated up because you got to remember that Colby plays a character more than anything. He is actually a nice guy. That's what everybody says. And Masvidal actually seems very, very upset going into this. So I think that maybe George opens himself up to some really stupid shit that Colby takes advantage of, maybe finishes the fight somehow. But more than likely, my pick going into this one is Colby Covington by decision. Last time I checked those odds, they were minus 110, which is way better than the minus 330 sure to go up favorite straight up in this one. So Colby by decision, that's what I'm taking, but going to sprinkle a little bit on Colby by KO, TKO as well. Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I think George Masvidal really should win a what's the award that you get for being an actor? Not a Tony, but a Oscar. Is it an Oscar? Yeah, I think it's an Oscar. Because he's managed to fool, and maybe he's whatever award there is for a marketing manager or maybe a publicist, because he's really managed to turn really abysmal last 5 fights into a lot of money and a lot of notoriety for himself. Chance is interested in this fight as well. Listen, he's got his last 2 fights are fights against Kamaru Usman. The first one went to decision. He took it on short notice. Usman was preparing for someone completely different. They stepped in there. Nods to him for competing, you know, for all 5 rounds, but it really wasn't that competitive of a fight. And then you turn around and his rematch, he gets knocked out in the first or the second round. I don't remember, but it wasn't a crazy combination. He said that, you know, he was expecting to grapple more and he just, you know, bad game plan and he got knocked out. Before that, he's got a win against Nate Diaz, right? That was due to doctor stoppage. And we know Nate Diaz comes on in the later rounds anyway. So there was really, how much do you really put into that fight there? Ben Askren flying knee TKO. Great. Ben Askren, I mean, great game plan, but what does that tell us about your actual skill level? And then before that, we're going 2 years and 11 months ago, almost 3 years ago, he has a win over Darren Till, who had multiple times said that he was depressed, didn't want to compete, had a bad training camp, blah, blah, blah. So those are his 5 wins that has been this resurgence, this rebaptism of George Masvidal. You know, you look at Colby Covington, it's not like he's got amazing wins either, but he beat RDA, who we talk about it. RDA is consistently at the top of the division, no matter his age. This was, you know, 3 years and 8 months ago. So Colby doesn't fight a lot. So you could say that, you know, he always is well prepared. I guess, or he doesn't have to deal with that consistent buildup of damage over short periods of time. So, big unanimous decision win over against RDA, big win over Robbie Lawler, all, feet and grappling based. I was at that fight. I think moving on to his next fight against Kamaru Usman, he was KO TKOs, but he popped right up. I can't really fault him for that, for really that was a good fight. Like you said, Keith, he's had the most amount of competition with Kamaru Usman. And Kamaru Usman has really been the best barometer for Colby Covington for assessing where he is. And when you do the same thing with George Masvidal, I know you can't say that, MMA math, he beat him and he beat him, so therefore he'll beat him. But at the end of the day, I don't think George Masvidal has anything that Colby can contend with. I think Colby has the durability to withstand whatever George is going to come at him. I don't think George is going to be able to one-punch knock out Colby Covington. Nobody has up until now. He's going to have to beat him with volume, and volume is Colby's game. I think Colby's going to be able to out-grapple him. I think he's going to be able to, at the very least, match him in terms of stamina. But all of that comes, I don't see how Colby loses this fight, and if he does, it's going to be pretty embarrassing for him. On top of that, he's 3 years younger.
Yeah. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like Tom's points. I think that Jorge has ridden this wave from the Ben Askren fight like nobody's business. He is a hell of a businessman. I think he's a good fighter, but I think that he's shown that his gas tank is not always there. I don't know if he has the power to knock out Colby, and I don't see him out grappling him or controlling anything on the ground with Colby. I think that he's shown that he's capable in the clinch. Kamaru kind of controlled him, but Jorge kind of knew what he was doing. At least he knew how not to get beat too bad. He lost by points, obviously, that first time around, getting his feet stepped on. But I don't know how Colby doesn't win this one. I think that he's annoying as hell, but I think that he's a really, really good fighter. I think that his stamina is better than anybody probably in the UFC, or it's at least up there. I think that Keith, you mentioned he's a point fighter, but I really like him by TKO in this one. I think that he has the ability to maybe work Jorge a little bit, get him a little tired, and then round 3 or 4 to start loading the punches on him. I think that he's going to just be too much to handle for Jorge. I think Jorge's had his time. I think he enjoys the silk sheets that he sleeps on now. I think that he's kind of not shown that he has everything that it takes to be kind of at the top of that division anymore. And, I really don't see Colby losing. I think, honestly, if Kamaru wasn't there, I mean, this is obvious because Colby's the top contender, but I think Colby would be a really good welterweight champ. Like, Kamaru happens to be one of the best ever, but I think Colby is such a good fighter. I don't think that Colby really has too many weaknesses. He's obviously just not quite there. Kamaru's bigger than him. All those reasons why Kamaru is better than him. But I think that Colby is still leagues ahead of some other guys at welterweight. And so I'm going to take him by TKO, probably round 3 or 4 if I had to guess. I like him to tire Jorge out and then just start loading him with the punches. And I think that, he's going to get to talk his talk after the fight. And I think that he's going to be in everybody's ass annoying them. But, I like him to win this fight, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close.
Yeah, so we're all in agreement there with that. So typically what we do, Josh, is now that the episode has come to an end, we run down our picks one last time. So I am going with the under and the fight not to go the distance in the Nick Negumereanu and Kennedy Nzechukwu fight. I'm going with Marino Rodriguez by decision. I'm taking Sergey Spivak, Kevin Holland, sneaky pick for Kevin Holland by submission. Taking Bryce Mitchell, another sneaky one by submission. And then I'm also taking Colby Covington. Going to put more on him to win by decision, but I do like the potential knockout TKO pick. So, Tom, run down your picks.
Yeah, I'm going Umar Nurmagomedov against Brian Boom Kelleher. I like him by finish. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on Mariana Moroz after finding out that she told Putin to go fuck himself, the Ukrainian fighter. So I feel like you cannot pick against Ukrainians right now. I'm taking Nick Negumereanu over Kennedy Nzechukwu by finish, by KO, TKO. I think Kennedy has a really bad chin. I like Marina Rodriguez over Yan Janyan. Jamie Malarkey over Jalen Turner. Going with Sergey Spivak over Greg Hardy. Kevin Holland over Alex Olivera. I agree with you. I like that submission pick. Edson Barboza is not going to beat Bryce Mitchell. And I got Colby Covington over Jorge Masvidal.
All right. Well, thank you all at home for joining us. Oh,
Keith.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
so used to just having the two of us on here.
No worries, man. I'm going to go ahead and take the under on rounds as well with the Nick Negumereanu and Kennedy Nzechukwu fight. I'm going to take Jalen Turner over Jamie Malarkey. I'm taking Greg Hardy over Sergey Spivak. Oh, that'll be an interesting one for us. I like Kevin Holland over Cowboy Olivera. Bryce Mitchell over Edson Barboza. Islam, if it happens against RDA, we'll see. And then Colby over Jorge as well.
I forgot to mention that Islam Makhachev fight. Yeah. All right, so now we're done. Thank you all at home for tuning in for another episode. Really appreciate all your support. Make sure if you haven't, please subscribe, give the video a like, and let us know down in the comments what you think is going to take place this weekend. You know, if you have a specific prop that you're feeling, you know, or if you don't like one of the methods of victory that we presented to you tonight, let us know down below. Additionally, follow us on Twitter. Our names are going to be down below our very handsome faces. And also check out @_Pickin Winners, Pickin, no G, on Twitter and Instagram, and pickinwinners.org for, you know, my blog posts. I always post up my blogs the day of the fights with my final last minute favorite picks. Not all my picks, just my favorite ones. And then we've got other guys over there like Tyler, who he posts up college lacrosse blogs. His picks have really been hitting. You know, we've got Connor with basketball, you know, and so many other guys. I'm probably not doing them justice by forgetting, but make sure that you guys are tuning in, checking out our stuff. And thanks again.